Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're going to look at a fifth submission by Lisette and the horse Timo. Now, in this submission, we're going to actually see her riding dressage test is what we're seeing here, and her question was, did I think she was on track? And I certainly do think she is in this video. So what I'm showing you first here is the first ride, and then we'll look at another one, and also of how the horse was going before. So for me right here, this is quite a nice training level, frame for this horse at this point. Working over his back pretty good at this height, and that's about where he needs to be. And what we're going to see, that's pretty good right there. That's really quite nice. Now, as you can see, he's got a nice big open swinging stride, and there's still like a nice little bounce to it. Now you can see with this horse, there's still a little bit of a hole behind the saddle. He really hasn't begun to develop uphill yet. But in this frame, we can look how lovely he's working out and through the back here in the trot, and that's about how we'd like him to be. And I think this is about what he's capable of doing right now. And even there, a little lengthening of stride there. He did swing out quite nicely, so that was good. So everything I'm seeing here is good so far. Got a good rhythm, not too deep in the corners. Once again, remember, that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make that I hear people telling people to do all the time is drive your horse's head into the corner. Well, that's not at all what you should do because the horse is going to have to slow down to do it. So just what we see her doing here is just what I'd like to see. Just nice wide corners. There's no loss of rhythm. Remember, that's the number one thing we're looking for in a dressage test is does the horse lose the rhythm? So far here, the rhythm would be absolutely fantastic. I haven't seen any change in the rhythm yet. And this stretch is going down nicely. So for a horse at training level, this is about what I would expect to see. And this is really good work. She said she got a 9 on that, and I wouldn't doubt that at all. And she brings him back up, and notice there's no resistance. He comes back. There's absolutely no change in stride. So for me, the score is here. The horse is over its back. So for me, when I score dressage, 5 means sufficient, which means that the horse has to be working over its back relative to the level that you're doing. And so most of this, I would give the horse a 5, and then above from there. Then the marks become higher depending on the brilliance of the movement and the accuracy and those kind of things. But you are achieving at least the 5 here in each movement. In other words, the 5 would be a 5 or a greater number than that. Now here for me, the canter is pretty good in this one. He's swinging out pretty nicely. Not completely over his back in the canter yet, but really pretty nice. It's almost there. And as long as you keep the head and neck out in that position, it's really quite good. And once again, the horse is able to make really good transitions here. So this is about right for this horse. Once again, made a lovely transition downward right there. Notice there was no pause in the rhythm. Just stepped right from one gait to the other and right back into this nice swinging stride. Now here it gets a little bit slow, not quite as swinging as it was a few moments ago, but you get it right back there again. So once again, look how nicely she arcs the corners there, not making them too sharp, not driving the horse's head into the corners. And now with a little sitting trot, that's quite nice there. No change of rhythm. Remember, that's always what we're looking for. So when she sits, I want no change of rhythm. Now you can see the canter for me still looks a little weak. You can see how he has to kind of toss his head up a little bit in order to get that going. And here it looks a little lumbering. In other words, it's kind of like the front end going up, the back end going down. And we'll see another clip of you after this, with the horse before you started working in this manner. And we'll see a very different canter even yet. But this is quite good. So for me at a training level, I mean, everything I'm seeing here, this test should easily be scoring in the 70%, for everything I've seen so far. Everything has been good. Nice downward transition there, very good rhythm, right back into a nice swinging trot over the back. The horse looks really soft and easy and really nice transition back to the walk there. The horse just stepped right into the walk. Now for me, the walk could be a little more swinging here, but it's not bad. You see, it's still got a little bit of stiff-leggedness to it behind, but that's going to improve. And I would like to see the horse stretch a little deeper there, but you're certainly on the right track. The beauty of the dressage test, they really were, now at least, pretty well designed. And, if you go through they're asking you to do movements that the horse is capable of doing at this level. And that's what we want to do at home as well, kind of put that in your mind. So a little bit of sitting trot there. That was a little bit hollow for me there and got a little, dropped her back a little bit on that one. But not bad at all. I mean, all this has been very good. The rhythm is very good. For me, this looks like a training level horse that's really in the right direction. And if we keep training in this way, I feel like I would be looking at a horse that is going to come up to the levels. And here we have a pretty nice little lengthening. It's a little bit stiff, but not too bad, but it swings pretty good. Remember in the lengthening to let the neck out, and if you start sometimes with the neck a little bit longer, that will be helpful so the horse doesn't skip back. So this test was all quite good. I would have easily scored this horse in the 70% on this. For a horse at training level, that was pretty much exactly what we're looking for. So a nice walks into a nice square halt. Now we're going to take a look at how she was riding the horse. So before she started this kind of training, this is what she was doing. So we can clearly see here that she's sitting, her legs are way out in front of her. She's driving her seat down into the horse's back. The horse is broken over at the third vertebrae. And it's actually cantering, standing on its hip. You see what I'm standing on its head, if you see what I'm talking about. The hips are higher than the forehand because it can't get out of its own way. So you can only imagine the difference. And now let's go to what we're seeing today. Now for me, this second test begins to push on trying to bring the horse up too high. This is why I showed the first one. In the first test, I thought the horse kept swinging really nicely. In this one, the head and neck is a little too high, and I feel like the gait suffers because of it very often. That gets a little bit short. Once again, you can still clearly see that little drop in the back there. So for me, this looks kind of short and a little bit stifled in this position. It doesn't have that nice swinging, rolling look to it that it had in the first test. It kind of looks like there's a haltingness to it. So for me, the difference is the head and neck is too far up. Now you see how the horse is bracing against its front legs a little bit and loses the rhythm there in the lengthening? That's because the head and neck was too high. So once again, where you did it on the other test was much, much better. Not a bad transition back to the walk, not as good as the first one. Once again, I feel like the neck needs to be further out in front of you, even in the walk here. Pretty good rhythm on that walk going across there once again because you're letting the horse down again. So I think what we can clearly see is there's a big difference here if we look closely. That just that little bit of trying to bring the head up a little too far makes a big difference in how the horse can maintain that swinging gait depending on its level of physical conditioning. Same thing here. See how the front legs seem to be like pushing into the ground. They're kind of stabbing a little bit there because now the horse has become stifled. So now the horse's head and neck is too far up and now it's kind of dropping its back and we're getting these short little choppy strides. And same thing, even the canter didn't go into as good a canter as it did in the first test. Once again, same thing. You're trying to keep the head and neck up too high for this horse's level of development. But of course, that could change over a week. A week from now, you might be able to do it at that height. And that's what we're looking for. But we don't want to spend a lot of time doing anything wrong. That's the biggest problem with people with horses is that they go, well, you know, you don't have to walk, trot, and canter a horse every day. You know, you do what you can do with the horse correct, and then you build on that foundation. So you can see how when he made the downwards transition there, it kind of like braced against the front leg for a minute. Once again, same thing here. For me, the trot is kind of stifled in this one. It's not terrible, but it's nowhere near as nice and swinging as it was. The hips look actually kind of higher to me. And that's kind of what happens, you know, when we pull the neck in, if the horse's back isn't up to the right degree or hasn't had the formation change, that of pulling the shoulders, pulling the withers up to the shoulders, you know, then the horse has to sort of get out of its own way behind. So it kind of ends up like you showed in that little clip, which I'm going to show again here at the end of this, so everybody can see what I'm talking about. So the horse is actually having to throw its hips up in the air to keep from running into the front end because the front end's being restricted. So here, same thing, it's kind of lumbering onto the forehand. So for me, that's a very on the forehand kind of canter right there, and the horse just needs to be swinging out and more active. The biggest thing for people to realize is just because you're going slow doesn't mean that it's collected. You know, it simply means that the horse is shortening. And remember, real collection is not from shortening. It's not shortening the stride, it's elevating the stride, which is a very big difference. And the stride actually elevates the entire body of the horse, as opposed to this kind of phony collection that we're now getting used to seeing. But look how much happier this horse looks going like this. Another good stretch here. And once again, look as soon as he stretches down how much better the stride looks. In the first test, there was no difference in the stride between the stretch. So that's the thing you got to look at. If the stride changes when you bring the horse back up, you've brought it up too far for its level of development on that particular day. So once again, big difference between that swinging stretch trot. But even after the trot, look how much better it looks a little better here. And once again, you're not bringing it up quite so high in the neck after that. You got a more swinging trot. So this, for me, improved a lot after that stretch, which should be a lesson to us all. When your horses start feeling tight, you can't get them to become loose by working them harder and fighting with their mouths. They become loose by going back to the stretch. And see how that kind of, once again, the horse braces against the front leg and pulls its pole up, not really coming through behind. That's actually quite hard on the horse's legs. That's why it's so important to do these exercises with the horses over their backs, Once again, that's what leads to all these horses going lame today, is none of them are working over their backs, or so few of them are, that they're ending up, every time you try to do a lengthening of stride on a horse that's hollow, you're going to end up with a very stiff leg the next day. And then ultimately bowed tendons and pulled suspensories and all these things that we know that dressage horses should not be so prone to if they were trained correctly. Same thing there. You can see how the back was kind of dropping. The stride got short. So as I said, once again, let's recap. The first one was really, really, really good. That was just about what this horse could do and do accurately. This one a little too high up, and I think you can see that. Now we're going to take one more look at how the horse was being schooled in the past. And what a difference in the rider. You can see how this horse has almost got its chin pinned to its chest, completely broken at the third vertebrae. It's standing on its head. Watch how the hips come higher than the forehand. So that's the horse that can't get its back end out. It can't get its front out of the way of the back end. So the back end is popping up like a rocking horse. Your horse should not feel like a rocking horse. That's a big misconception that I hear people repeating, that your horse should feel like a rocking horse. It should not at all. A correct horse feels like it lifts you up and stabilizes you in position. Once again, see how completely behind the bridle this is, not at all over its back. Its back is just sinking. And once again, you see how crooked the horse is all the time. So now I'm just going to run the first test again, and I'm just going to let it play and let you all just watch this, because this was really good. How this test just flowed around, how completely different this horse looks, and how different the rider looks as well. Flowing. See how the test continues to flow forward. Nothing interrupts the stride. And there's no change. That's what we're looking for. The hallmark of good dressage is rhythm, but not the kind of nervous rhythm that we saw develop. That was part of the problem with the roll cur issues, that they had the idea to make the horses rhythm, but they were doing it by getting the horses frantic, so they're just kind of out of their minds. And of course, that's a very tense rhythm, and it looks very different. This horse looks like it's just flowing around the arena. That's what it should look like at Grand Prix. It should look no different in that sense. It should look like it just continues to flow. Watch Charlotte Desjardins once again for a perfect example of someone who is doing that. But once again, you could just set a metronome to this. Click, 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 click. No change. Very nicely into the stretch. And watch how when she comes back up, there's no change in the rhythm as there was in the second test that we looked at. Maybe just for a brief second there, but not much. Came right back into the same frame. In other words, it didn't go from a shortened frame into a long frame and back. She came right back to the same frame that she had in the stretch. Same thing here in the canter. Notice how the horse just continues to roll along forward. It doesn't have that look like it's bracing against its front legs like it had at times in the second test. Beautiful downwards transition. Notice that once again, it was able to just step right into the transition, right into this next gate without any halting. Kind of like a transmission that is working correctly. And that's basically what it is, when you think about that. And that's the back allows the transmission that connects the front and back end to work together. Same thing here in that sitting trot. There was no change of rhythm. So as I was saying before, for me, all of this test would have scored 5 or above. Some, at the worst of it, would have been a 5. But there isn't any place where you totally lose the horse in this test. That is, lose the horse over the back. So for me, every movement would have been a 5 or higher. And once again, there was no, basically, no big glaring inaccuracies or anything like that that one would have to add in. A beautiful test to watch, and that's how all tests should be. Right up through the levels. They should continue to flow, and you should feel that flow like a dance, but not a forced dance. Not like you're, so much of the dressage today, I put it this way, it kind of looks like, remember the old Western movies where the people would make the cowboy would take his gun and make the people dance, right? Well, that's kind of what some dressage looks like today. It looks like they're doing it with a gun to their head, and essentially they are. But look how pleasant this looks in comparison to what we saw in that little clip of her previously working the horse. This looks like a happy horse, and it looks like a much more balanced rider. Once again, remember, when you ride like this, you're not holding against the mouth of the horse, so you have to learn to balance. Your legs will get underneath you. Once again, that little clip that we saw of her legs were sticking out in front of her. She was bracing. Once again, not bad there. Still not really ready for that too much, but that was way better than in the other test. Nice transition into the walk there, just dropped right into it. Great job. So this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride. Hope that helps. This has been Lisette and Timo doing some dressage tests for us, and happily she's brave enough to send along that other clip of how she used to ride. Great job.